Today's video is brought to you by Cars and Bids, my online enthusiast car auction site that recently sold this, and this, and this, and this, and this. Check it out at carsandbids.com. This is a 2023 Volvo C40 Recharge, and it looks like a turtle. Really, that sloped back turtle. But it's also a fully electric crossover with a starting price of under $60,000, which is surprisingly hard to find. So it's been getting some attention lately. Today, I'm going to review the C40 Recharge and show you all of its quirks and features. All right, I'm going to start the quirks and features of the C40 Recharge with a little explanation of exactly what this is. Like I said, fully electric crossover. This is a luxury small crossover, and its biggest rivals would be the Genesis GV60, the Tesla Model Y, the Ford Mustang Mach-E, and the Audi Q4 e-tron. Now, interestingly, there's also a rival from Volvo. It's called the XC40 Recharge, and it's basically just this, but with a more traditional rear end design. It doesn't have the slopey roof of the C40 Recharge, but instead it has a flat, normal looking roof like a more traditional crossover. The C40 Recharge is supposed to be the stylish, cool, coupe looking version, although I think it looks like a turtle. Now, interestingly, there is a gasoline version available of the XC40. You can get that electric or gas powered, but that's not the case here. The C40, this car, is only available as full electric, the C40 Recharge. Now, that sloped roof is intended to make the C40 more stylish, like I said, but the drawback is it steals some cargo room. I'll get to that in a little bit. However, it also gives this car a more aerodynamic design than the regular XC40, which should benefit its electric range, except it doesn't really. The EPA rates this at 226 miles of electric range, whereas the standard XC40 is at 223. So your sloped roofline only gets you 3 additional miles of range. Maybe that teardrop shape that all the EV automakers insist that they need isn't really that important after all. So since we're talking numbers, let's talk power. This vehicle is pretty impressive. It has dual motors, so front and rear, which means that all-wheel drive is standard. And this dual motor electric powertrain is of course shared with the XC40 Recharge and also with the Polestar 2 electric sedan. Overall, this has over 400 horsepower, which is a pretty impressive figure, particularly for this segment. The Audi Q4 e-tron is down about 100 horsepower compared to this, and the Genesis GV60 only has 314 horsepower to this car's 402. But the drawback is range. Like I said, 226 mile range from the C40 Recharge, which frankly is pretty weak. The Q4 e-tron has a 265 mile electric range, and even the GV60 is around 250. So everything has more range than the C40 Recharge, but your trade-off is you get more power. And of course, you will have to decide whether you want power or range in this segment with these rivals. As for performance, I'll cover that a little bit later when I drive the C40 Recharge, but on paper, 0 to 60 in the low 4-second range, which is pretty quick. And as for charging, Volvo says this is fast charge capable, which means it can recharge 80% of its power in just 40 minutes if you can find a charger to support it, which is pretty excellent. But anyway, next we climb inside the C40 Recharge, where we quickly discover a few rather interesting quirks, starting with the fact that there is no starter button. Although there's a clear blank for where a starter button would have been in the exact position of where it is on the gas-powered XC40. These cars share a lot of their interiors, and so they share the dashboard, and that includes the starter button, except not actually a starter button in this car. So you get in, and your instinct is to press that blank, but it does nothing. Instead, if you want to start the car, you get in with the key in your pocket, you put your foot on the brake, and then you shift into drive, and then you're started and going. Now, this is going to be a little controversial, because even though electric vehicles don't really need to be started and turned on in the same way that gas-powered vehicles do, to, most consumers seem to want to get in something and push a button to turn it on, but that's not going to be the case here. A few electric vehicles are like this. They don't have a button. You just get in and go, and that is the situation in the C40. But that is nowhere near the only interesting quirk in this interior. On the contrary, there are quite a few. When you shift into drive, you will notice that the gear selector has a hole in the middle of it. You stick your fingers through, it has a hole. Rather odd, but that's the way they've done it. And also unusual in the center console, there is a trash can. You can see here this little lid, you push it in and you can put trash. That's what this is for, an actual trash can inside the car. Then when it fills up, you can lift it up and empty it out somewhere into a trash bag, your household garbage, and then stick it back in your car so that your trash can is in place for you to use it again. An interesting idea for in-car trash integrated into the C40 Recharge. And how about this for odd? You can see on the door panel and the dashboard these weird angles and lines. There's this trim with this kind of odd angular pattern on those surfaces. You might be wondering, what exactly is that? Well, at night it lights up. You can see here on the door panel, it lights up in sort of a mood lighting glow, and same deal on the dashboard. It lights up. Now you can see it's flickering in my camera screen, but it doesn't actually flicker in real life. That's just because it's an LED, but it does light up as a mood lighting touch, and it does that over on the door panel as well. Very odd. I guess it's supposed to be like a relief map or an elevation map to make you feel more adventurous, but either way, some weird lines, and they light up. And then we have the color in here. You can see a lot of the carpeting is blue. Carpeting on the door panel is blue, sort of a denim color, and same deal on the floor itself. You have blue carpeting and blue floor mats in here, sort of a dark denim blue. Now they do this to match the exterior color, and of course you don't have to. I'm sure they sell this vehicle with regular black carpeting if you want, but they offered blue to make things a little funkier and a little weirder in here. And speaking of interior materials, another interesting thing about this car is there's no leather. Not just in this one, it's not available. Volvo isn't offering any leather in this interior at all. In fact, Volvo says this is their very first vehicle ever made without any leather of any kind. They're doing this for environmental reasons, for animal reasons, and so no leather in the car. Now, interestingly, the seats have a material that feels very much like leather. It feels, it looks, it touches a lot like leather, but it's not. It's a composite material that is made in a factory rather than made from using animal hides. There's no real leather anywhere in this interior. And by the way, speaking of the seats, one other interesting item you can see over on the passenger seat stitched into the backrest is this. That's a Swedish flag. Just to remind everyone that this car has its Swedish heritage from Volvo. That little flag is stuck in the seat. And one other cool quirk in the front of this car, this interior, you have this little clip sticking out from basically the base of the windshield. That's there for like parking tickets. You feed a parking meter and it gives you a little display of how long until your time expires. You can stick it in that little clip, and then it's more easily readable for anyone coming by. Instead of just tossing it on the dashboard, you actually have a handy little clip where you can place that or a disabled placard or anything you might want to keep it in place facing out on your windshield, which is a cool idea. Now, aside from all of the interesting quirks in this interior, it is a fairly traditional Volvo interior in this car. And that means a few traditional Volvo things, starting with the vertical infotainment screen here in the center. This is on basically all new Volvo products, and any Volvo owners are going to be used to and familiar with this. Although one big change to this infotainment system in recent models, including this one, it's now Google based. So you can see it has Google Maps. Instead of like a built-in proprietary map system, it's using Google Maps, same you might use on your phone or other devices. You also have Google Assistant and other Google-based apps in here, which might make this car easier to integrate into your tech life if you are already using a lot of Google products. Now, one drawback of this vertical infotainment screen is that it incorporates the climate control functions, meaning you don't have physical buttons or dials for climate control in this car. Instead, it's all controlled in the screen. Now, it's not so bad because the most frequently used controls are stuck at the bottom of the screen and they're always there, and you can just tap and control stuff just like you would with a button. Change the temperature, the airflow, that sort of thing. But if you want to do anything more than that, you do have to pull up a full climate control screen, rather than just tapping buttons, which is easier and which is how most other cars do it. It's also worth pointing out that the screen has integrated the heated seat and heated steering wheel controls, which also isn't really ideal. You gotta tap on the control and then tap to turn on the heated seat or steering wheel. It just adds an extra layer to the process compared to just pushing a button. Now, the other interesting screen in this interior is, of course, the gauge cluster screen, which I would describe as being, well, fine. It has all the information that you would want to see on it, and you have Google Maps right there in the center of this screen, directly in your line of sight, which is nice, but there's not all that much configurability. Most rivals offer the ability to change around this screen in many more ways, show you music and phone and all sorts of different stuff. You can't do that quite as much in this car, which is a bit of a disappointment. Volvo has been using this same basic gauge screen design for several years now, and it's starting to get old compared to rivals that do it a bit better. And speaking of tech in this car, also want to talk about the driver assist technologies. I will get to that when I get the C40 Recharge out on the road in a few minutes. And next up we move on to the back of the C40 Recharge, where headroom is surprisingly not that affected by the turtle shape of this vehicle. It's affected a little bit, but I'm very tall, 6'4", and sitting in the back seat, my head is up against the roof, but not dramatically more than it would be in most other small crossovers like this. In fact, I'm also surprised by legroom. The front seat is where it would be if I was sitting in it, and I have decent legroom in the back of this vehicle despite its relatively small size. It's good packaging back here. You do have more room than you might expect. Aside from that, however, not much interesting to discuss in the back seats. You do have a power port, which is obviously nice, and you also have controls for heated seats, which is a nice luxury touch back here, but otherwise nothing too unusual, interesting, exciting in the back. Now, with that said, the blue carpeting does make an appearance back here. You can see the footwells are all blue, which adds to kind of a funky little flair in back, and just like up front, the door panels have the same blue carpeting integrated within them, again, to kind of give it a little bit more visual flair. And next up, we move on to the cargo area in the C40 Recharge. You open up the power tailgate, of course, and you can see fairly standard cargo area back here, nothing too unusual or special. You do have a little extra storage on the sides, as you can see, for smaller items, and you can lift up the cargo area floor, and there's a little bit more storage down there too, so you got decent space back here. But this is where this car's turtle shape really has an effect compared to the standard XC40. You can see this roof line comes down and kind of interferes with this cargo area, especially for larger items. And it's not just that it looks that way, the numbers prove it out. Standard XC40 has about 58 cubic feet of cargo space all in with the seats folded. This is down to 49. Not a huge difference, still a lot of space back here, but definitely less than the regular car. And remember, you are paying more in the C40 Recharge in order to give up a little bit of cargo space. The XC40 Recharge starts around $2,500 cheaper than the C40 Recharge. But in this car, you do get the slopey roofline and those 3 extra miles of electric vehicle range. With the tailgate down, you can also see the C40 Recharge adds a rear spoiler, which I guess might be important, give it a sporty look, and these 2 humps above the rear window. Not entirely sure what they are for, but they do give it a more distinctive look from the rear end and breaks up a bit of the turtle shell design. Also interesting back here, another weird quirk is the taillights, which go up the sides of the car and back, kind of a Volvo hallmark, but the design is unusual. You have these little dashes of light that go up the side of the car instead of one long light pipe. It's a little bit strange to see that, but it adds a little bit more flair. And finally, also on the subject of cargo space, it's worth pointing out there is additional cargo space up front, but there are a couple of drawbacks. For one thing, access isn't especially easy. You can't just push a button on the key fob and it pops open. You gotta go into the driver's footwell and pull a latch like you're pulling a hood latch on a normal gas-powered car, then come around to the front and press another latch to release the front hood, and then you have it open, and then you open this large plastic piece and discover the second drawback to the front storage area, which is it's not really all that large. You can see not too much space up front, but you do have some extra space up here where you can stick, well, the charging cables. As you can see, it's a good spot for them, or other small items that you want to take with you, but you don't necessarily want rolling around in the back. Adding a little front storage helps. but it is a little front storage. All right, driving the C40 Recharge, the turtle-looking version of the XC40 Recharge. Now, you may be wondering why I didn't just review the XC40 Recharge. The answer is, I've already done the gas-powered XC40. It was a while ago. It was when it first came out as a gas-powered model, probably 4 years ago. But I figured if I'm gonna do an electric powertrain, I might as well do the different body style as well, kind of knock off all things. A couple of benefits of the Volvo. Like I mentioned, that the range is not particularly good, but the performance is 400 horsepower. More than 400 horsepower is excellent. Now, there is a version of the Genesis GV60 that has like 440, but it's more expensive. And this car actually kind of lives in a neat sweet spot for performance and price point. Range is low, but performance and price point is pretty nicely aligned. There are some higher performance EV SUVs that you can get, like the BMW iX and the GV60 performance, but they're big money. And then the cheaper luxury EVs like the Q4 e-tron is slow and not that great, and the Mercedes EQB. This is kind of a nice middle ground, except for that range figure, which is just disappointing. So let's talk about that performance. You floored and it moves. They say 0 to 60, I think Volvo quotes 4.7, but the magazines are getting low 4s. It feels low 4s. This feels quick, seriously quick. More than a Volvo crossover you would expect. Now, I think this was a great decision from Volvo to make this vehicle fast. Some of the other car companies have not really been doing that with their EVs, which is surprising because Tesla has. And so everything else is getting compared to those vehicles. Teslas are fast, so why not make your EV competitive? And this is that. Volvo was like, screw it, we're gonna compete, and it does. And it feels quick, and it is surprisingly quick to accelerate in a great way. Now, the other nice benefit here from a driving perspective is it feels a lot like other Volvo models, which is to say it's nice and comfortable. Obviously, you're in a crossover, you're sitting high up, you have good visibility out, you can see stuff. And Volvo's interiors are excellent. There's a lot of great interior benefits to these cars. They're beautiful, they're nice places to spend time, and this car is that as well. And so this isn't one of those electric cars where you're making some weird compromise in terms of how it looks to get an EV like you do with the BMW iX and a few others. And frankly, that's also true of the driving experience. Short of the range situation and the fact that you have to fill up with electricity, this just drives like a nice Volvo crossover. Now, as you've probably picked up on during this video, I'm not sure I would get the C40 version. The XC40 to me is a gorgeous car, and so I don't know why you would pay more to get the sloping roof and trade some cargo space, and it doesn't really benefit you in terms of range. Now, I will say, neither vehicle is tremendously expensive given what they offer, so they're both already pretty good deals, and you don't lose the rear seat practicality that I was expecting. But you do lose cargo space practicality, and I'm a little surprised by the lack of visibility in this car too. With that sloping roofline, you don't quite have a rear window that's quite as easy to see out of. I just think the XC40 is the one to get here if you're going to. Now, I did also want to talk briefly about the driver assist technology in this car, which is fantastic. Volvo has great driver assist. You turn it on, it will steer for you, it will accelerate. Volvo has moved on to a capacitive touch steering wheel, so you used to have to like jiggle the wheel to let the car know you were there. That's no longer true. So it will steer for you as well in most situations, as long as your hand is kind of like resting on the wheel, which is nice to see and nice to have. This particular car will not change lanes for you. That's kind of the new frontier in driver assist tech. The cars that will change lanes for you versus the ones that don't, because pretty much everything now brakes, accelerates, and steers, and this does a good job of that, but no lane changes here. Overall though, a good driver assist system, but generally speaking, this car has good tech, a good driving experience, and I think it's totally competitive against other, little luxury electric crossovers. It doesn't have as many like hooks and gimmicks as a GV60, and it's not quite as like engaging and fun to drive as a Mustang Mach-E or even a Model Y. But I think if you just want a Volvo, but you want to go electric, this car delivers it all. There's no drawbacks, except that I would get the regular XC40 instead. And so that's the 2023 Volvo C40 Recharge, the turtle-shaped electric crossover. Or if you prefer a non-turtle, you can get the XC40. Jokes aside, this is actually a pretty appealing vehicle, especially because automakers have been surprisingly slow to roll out fully electric crossovers. Volvo is here and now with this one, and it has good performance, decent range, decent technology, and it starts under $60,000. And now it's time to give the C40 Recharge a DougScore. And the DougScore is here, 62 out of 100, which places the Volvo C40 Recharge here against some similar models. It's better than the Audi Q4 e-tron and the Jaguar I-Pace, but so is basically everything. However, the C40 falls short of the Ford Mustang Mach-E, the Kia EV6, the Hyundai Ioniq 5, the Tesla Model Y Performance, all of the best cars in this segment. The C40 is nice, but it's a bit pricey for what it delivers, especially compared to these other electric crossovers, and while the C40 is a good choice, I'd probably end up with something else first.